Hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. Today we're doing a take two. Last week there were some technical difficulties on today's episode, and while I thought I could come home from Santa Cruz and quickly turn this around and put it up on Friday, I was mistaken. And rightfully so. I didn't want to rush through this very important information. For those of you that don't know Clint Ober or ground therapy or earthing, today's show is a bit technical, but so important. I believe that this movement is offering us a way to get back some of the things that we've lost over the years in our technological era and in our fast-paced not being in touch with the earth and not really reaping those benefits that we once had. I believe that today's show will convince most of you, if not all of you, to spend more time in nature and to help those around you with easy ways for them to get relief for certain situations like arthritis, MS, lupus, any kind of autoimmune disorder, anything where inflammation is part of the root cause. For your pets, for aging parents. In fact, Earthing, I bought this book, and you'll hear me talk to Clint about this. I bought this book when it first came out 9 years ago and gave it to everyone I knew. And now that I have been enjoying the products myself and feeling them firsthand, I'm absolutely going to be putting this on my Christmas list for people who otherwise wouldn't get it. So let's say my parents or some of my clients, people who I know aren't listening to this show, but would benefit from having earthing as part of their regular health regime. And it doesn't really require them to do anything different. Once you set it all up, they just act in their normal ways and they can get the benefits of earthing. So because it's taken me a little longer to put this show back up, I did secure a different kind of deal for all of you. So for those of you, and this will be in the show notes. So when you click on my link, which is jjflazanes.com/earthing, you're going to be taken to a bundle. I'm able to offer you a bundle, which would be to buy one ground therapy sleep mat and get a universal mat for free. So you will be saving $70. So the whole bundle costs $130, but you're getting two products for that $130. So you'll hear all about the products later. But again, my bundle, the JJ bundle, the JJ recommends, when you click on the link, is to get one ground therapy sleep mat, which you put underneath your sheet on your bed, and then it just takes care of it. And then you're going to get a universal mat, which you can put under your feet, you can put on the back of a chair, you can put it under your arms at your desk if you spend a lot of time at your desk. You can even put it somewhere where you have pets, so your animals, your indoor animals, can get the benefits as well. So again, that's jjflazanes.com/earthing, or just click on the link in the show notes. Now, because we just set this up, if for those of you that are super fast to purchase, if it doesn't show up as a free universal mat, it'll be fixed, but you can go ahead and contact customer service and tell them about the JJ Recommends special, and that will make sure you get your free universal mat, which is $70. It's a really good deal. As we head into today's show, let me just introduce Clint Ober. Clint Ober, grounding pioneer and 30-year veteran of the cable television industry, began investigating the effects of electrically grounding the human body to Earth in 1998. He subsequently set off a scientific odyssey, working with researchers including biophysicists and electrophysiologists, and developed comfortable earthing systems that people could use indoors. After grounding people across the world, the benefits of the Earth's energy on the mind, body, and soul are undeniable. Once a cowboy from the great state of Montana, Clint spends every waking hour in the pursuit of understanding and identifying the impact that ground contact has on the body. The findings to date have improved the lives of more people than he could ever believe. I gave the mic to Clint for most of today's interview because I wanted him to share the beginnings of this movement and all of the studies and the stories and the successes of the work he's been doing in the world. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am very delighted to bring you Clint Ober today. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you've already heard a more detailed bio, which will be underneath this video for those of you watching it on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you get your videos on many of the channels. I've been trying to get Clint and I to have this conversation for probably
8 or 9 years.
Wow.
Literally after his first book came out, actually Earthing, I have one of the very original books.
Yes.
I think I heard about it through Dr. Christian Northrup.
Yes.
And immediately, I'm going to put you in the category like Biology of Belief
Right.
by Bruce Lipton.
Uh-huh.
I have the book.
Right.
I support the book.
Yep.
I've never read the book.
Okay.
because the concept alone is enough that I know intuitively in myself
Yes.
that I'm like, yes.
Yes.
So I kind of feel like, all right, I believe this and I don't need to be sold anymore on this concept. No. I 100% take it on.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing for Earthing. The second that Dr. Christian Northrup talked about the book, I bought that year maybe 20 of them for all of my clients, for my family members, for myself, because I immediately, and I did watch a video back then as well, that I immediately thought, oh yeah, absolutely. Like this is just a no-brainer.
Right.
And I know you have a ton of science that continues to grow and expand and change.
Yes.
But I was like, okay, but I haven't read the whole book. I did start to read it. I didn't read the whole book because I'm like, I get it. And I'm doing it. And I'm sitting on a grounding mat and I've got a grounding mat on my feet and I'm laying on one on the bed. So I'm going to shut up for a second. I'm just a big fan of the fact that you've brought this science to our attention. Like literally utilizing what we have in the world to help heal us naturally and why we've gone down that path. So Clint, please, let's start at the beginning of your story and how you even got into this.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, JJ, thanks for having me on the show. I'm sorry it took so long, but everything happens the way it's supposed to. So maybe I think we have more to share. And I think this is really a good time to be on your show. So I really am grateful for that. Where do I start? Let's see. First of all, I grew up in Montana, so I have a very earthy background and worked ranch farming and spent a lot of time with animals and taking care of animals. One of the things that's kind of a basis in my background is when I was quite young and learning how to pay attention, I guess. My grandfather took me out and we had a little herd of cattle out there, about 800. And so he said, you're a cowboy now, and your cowboys aren't like on TV. They're not out there like Roy Rogers and whatever. But what your job is to ride with the herd, look at the herd, always look at them, pay attention to them. If one of them is not well, meaning they're sick or they're bawling or there's something going on, they're different than the rest of the animals in the herd, then we cut them out, put them in a pen, take them away from the herd. And then first thing we do is ride the pasture, make sure there's no noxious weeds growing, make sure the grass is not too short, make sure the water is okay, go upstream, make sure there's not a dead animal upstream. But the concept of it is very simple. If you keep the pasture pristine, then the animals will be healthy. And then you, as a business, you'll make money. If you let the animals get sick, then you got to call the vet and the banker at the same time and say, here's the keys. You guys got it from here. And so I've always kind of had that little thing in the back of my, so I've always been looked at prevention. I grew up, Prevention magazine was something that was in the home. And I always remember, reading the little stories in prevention and the apple a day concept. So that's kind of part of my background. And then, but I spent 30 years in the communications industry, primarily cable television, broadcast television, microwave, uplinks, downlinks, anything to do with television signals and electrical. But in that industry or in any of those industries, the main thing we had to do is to ground the equipment and the systems to the earth. We have to ground cable TV lines, telephone lines. Everything has to be grounded to the earth in order to maintain electrical stability so that everything is quiet and, and to protect against charge, lightning, static electricity that's created when the wind blows or there's dust in the air. It is an untold amounts of electromagnetic interference. So we have to shield everything, ground everything. So I grew up in that industry having a full working knowledge of grounding. If there was noise in the signal, something going on, more ground, check the ground, clean the ground, do these things. And so I retired from the industry in 94, 95, somewhere back in that time. And I spent about 4 years driving around the country. Well, there's a whole story goes in between that. But so anyhow, the real background is I have a working knowledge of grounding. But anyhow, one day I was working on a computer and the computer kept crashing. And I knew back then it was static electricity because if I touched the computer, it would always crash. So I had to get rid of the static on my body from the environment. So I put a piece of tape across my copper tape across my the computer wasn't, that type of a computer wasn't grounded. It was one of the early Apples. And so I put a little copper piece on there and connected it to a ground and so on. And then I would touch it before I touched the computer. Worked great. So then shortly after that, I went outdoors and I was sitting on a bench and a tour bus pulled up. I was in Sedona, Arizona. And a tour bus pulled up, and as the people got off the bus, they were like, it was a tour from Japan, and they were a little shorter in stature people, but they had on the white, it seemed like all of them had on white Nike tennis shoes, like they'd just been to a strip mall or a outlet mall, and they were on sale. And I have no idea why, but you know, you were talking about intuition, but I had it came to me intuitively. I just asked the question. I said, I wonder if there's a consequence to humans no longer being naturally grounded. Because when I was a kid, we were barefoot all the time. The only time we wore shoes, we had leather shoes and we wore them going to church, going to school or special events. And then if it rained while we were out with the leather shoes, we had to take them off and carry them. Because if they got wet, the water would ruin them. And then we got in trouble. So, as soon as we got out of school, I remember the first thing we did was lose the shoes, and we didn't put them back on until it was time to go back to school. So anyhow, I didn't tie that all together. I just knew that, you know, barefoot was more like the way we used to be. After doing a lot of research, finding that in 1960, that's when we had rubber soles before that and a few shoes, work shoes and so on. But in 1960, we invented the plastics that we use like in flip-flops or that we have in the common shoes that we wear today. So everybody started wearing them. Today, 90% of the population wears an athletic type or a plastic soled shoe. And again, I didn't know a lot about the consequences, but that night I went home. When I asked that question, I went home and I connected a voltmeter to the earth outdoors, walked around and was measuring the difference in electrical potential between my body and the earth. It's supposed to be equal with the earth, be zero. And you just take for granted that it is because we live on the earth. But when we put shoes on, we're insulated from the earth, just like a jacket on a wire insulates the wire from electricity or whatever getting out. So I started walking around, and there's all kinds of static charges, EMF charges. And I said, you know, there's something going on here because that's probably not good for you. And so I went up that night and getting ready to go to bed, and I went and got some tape and everything. But I took a piece of metal tape, put it on my bed, and I connected a alligator clip to it with a wire, threw it out the window, grounded it to the earth, threw a second wire out and connected it to a voltmeter. So I could lay on the copper tape, and I think that was aluminum tape actually, and then hold the voltmeter in my hand, and I could see that when I was laying on the tape, I was at zero. That means I was at earth potential. So then if I disconnected from it, then I could see the voltage come up from the environmental electric fields, or just lifting a blanket in your bed creates huge static electrical charges. And so I didn't know too much about it, but that night I fell asleep, and I woke up in the morning and the voltmeter was right by my side. And what's significant about that is at that time I was a 50-year-old. I'm now 75. But I had skiing injuries, tennis injuries, grew up a cowboy riding and steer riding, all the crazy stuff when you're young. So I had every kind of pain that you could think of. And, you know, being a man, you know, no pain, no gain. Well, I was a real man because I had a lot of pain. So anyhow, I didn't think too much about that, but I did fall asleep that night. And then normally in the morning, I had to take Advil and drink some coffee, or take Advil to go to sleep. And then in the morning, take Advil and coffee to get going in the morning. But anyhow, a couple days I played with it, and then I grounded a couple of my friends. I said, hey, you guys want to check this out? And so I did the same thing I was doing. And a couple of days later, one of the guys said, he said, do you think this could have anything to do with arthritis? And I said, I don't think so. I think it just helps you sleep better. And so then I realized that night that, gosh, my pain had gone way down. I used to have a lot of chronic pain from back surgery, from knee injuries, ankle injuries, you name it. And all of a sudden I thought, wow, there's something here. And I didn't really know. So I kept playing with it and playing with a couple of my friends. And then I started, okay, there's something here. So I need to figure out what this is. Started to do some research on the effects of pain, grounding, things like that. There's no such thing in the literature. I ended up going down to University of Arizona and trying to find some stuff in medical libraries, just trying to find anything. The internet was not, this is back in 98, 99. There just wasn't much there. You could barely get online, let alone go get something. And I played with it and played with it. And the only thing I found was some folklore, from Native Americans. But I did find that you have to ground the human body before you can, like if you have heart surgery, open surgery, you have to ground the body to eliminate all static electricity from the surgeons or anybody in the room. So I did find there's something about grounding there, but I knew a lot about grounding, but in my mind, I kept saying, well, when you ground a TV signal or anything, an electrical appliance, what you're doing is you're quieting, you're reducing any charge, and you're quieting the system down, and everything functions normally. But when you lose your ground, then you get all kinds of chaos. So I tried to tie it together. I didn't know anything about biology, anything about the nervous system. But as time went on, more improvements in my friends. And then I headed to California. I said, I got to go somewhere where I can figure this out. I ended up at UCLA. And they kind of, I remember the conversation. They said, you expect us to believe somebody drives a nail in the ground, ties a wire around their toe, they're going to sleep better? They actually said, hey, you're nuts. Get out of here. Go away. And so I left it at that because they didn't really understand anything electrical, that group I was dealing with. And I didn't understand anything about biology. So it was a real exercise. It was fun. So how far do you want me to go? It could go on forever.
I know. And I'm like, I kind of want you to keep going, but I know, let me just interject a few things.
Okay.
Because I actually did read all of that, although it's been many years. Like I said, I probably got this book not too long after you published it the first time in 2010 or 11, and was all about that. And and I think, I've worked with UCLA recently. They're a great institution.
Sure.
When it comes to medical advancement, but all of medicine is still slowly. I don't know if you know Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven. And so he's been on the show several times. He's, because now he's gone from what he calls, I forget what he calls in Western medicine, but now to sort of that energy medicine. And I've had Dawson Church on, who wrote Mind to Matter and does everything with epigenetics and how energy moves matter. And the idea that in 2010, we weren't even open to, especially with such a great institution like UCLA, they're just so far ahead of, I think, of a lot of institutions in medicine, because I had a procedure that people have never heard of before. And it was something very non-invasive. And I scoured the internet looking for something, but as advanced as they are now, and still, I find that, and Dr. Alexander and I talked about this, the amazing lack of trust, even though Western medicine uses placebo and has for years. So the idea of energy and the earth having energy, and the earth and about the concept of grounding. And again, you're such a forward thinker. So you had that intuition of looking at those Asians with all their white clothing and those shoes, and then just having that random conversation with yourself that you would think is innocent enough. And here we are, 25 years later, and you have built a business, an empire, products, and a movement around the very basic idea of the earth has energy. And when we're in touch with, literally touching and affected by Earth's energy, it brings us into a neutral state energetically, and we get support from that. So, so you're at UCLA, they make fun of you. We all know how that turns out, obviously, apparently, but let's go through some highlights about that conversation in terms of how long it took you, how many studies, how many, I know that there's a little bit of story in the book.
Yeah. Okay. The main thing that I was searching was pain. And what I was trying to understand is, what is the source of pain? What is the cause of pain? And believe it or not, back in that time, there was like the cause of chronic pain unknown, cause of lupus unknown, cause of MS, cause of arthritis, cause of anything, it was unknown. And that just blew me away. I said, I mean, here we have all these institutions, all of these people that do nothing except research, and you think they would know everything. And so anyhow, that's just kind of, I didn't know what to do with that. So anyhow, I ended up doing a study. I got a couple of the kids down at UCLA to give me some guidance, and we pulled together a study, and we took 60 people, and we grounded half of them. We took a 1 foot by 2 foot conductive mat, and we had them sleep on it. Half of them were grounded to the earth. The other half were grounded to the earth, but there was no continuity in the wire. So we had a good collection of data, and none of the doctors, nobody would help me. So I ended up, one day I was getting my hair cut and I was listening to a couple of ladies talking about sleep and pain. And I thought, well, women, they talk. So I said, afterwards, I talked to the the owner, and I said, I'm doing a study and I need to get people who have pain and can't sleep. I would like to enroll them in the study. It doesn't cost them anything, and it's free, and we think there's benefits. And so I ended up getting 60 subjects from beauty salons in Ventura, California. And then I found a nurse along the way who said, because I had to have somebody interface with these ladies other than myself. And so she kind of took charge of it. And so then what I did is I went out and I started doing, once it was all set up, then they would send me out to ground or put the equipment in the home, connect the bed up. And in doing that, I would always measure the electric fields in the bedroom. And then I would ground the pad to the earth, ground the meter. And so I could always, then I would have the person sit on their bed. Then I would put the pad on the bed and then have them sit on it or lay on it so I could get the measurements. They didn't really need to know. I just wanted to know. And even the placebo ones, I had to know what amount of EMFs were in the home, because that's what I was basing it on, EMF at the time, or exposure to EMFs and static electricity. So anyhow, that went on, and that study was done, and it was a nice study. But the thing that came out of that study, I mean, first of all, everybody slept better. They had a lot less pain. And then you kept hearing things about PMS cramps going away and TMJ going away and all kinds of little things that were anecdotal. And so we recorded all of it. But the thing that was most interesting in that study was one day I went out and grounded 2 people. One of them was an elderly man who had all kinds of arthritis, sleep issues, everything. And I went to his home, and in his bedroom, he had a bed with a metal frame, and it was on a concrete floor, no carpets, no static electricity to speak of in the house. And he had no lamps or nightstand next to his bed. And so there's no lights, there was no electrical equipment nearby, so there's no EMF. And I thought, wow, and unfortunately he was getting a live pad. So I said, wow, this is too bad. This is not going to be a good outcome. And then later that afternoon, I went over to another home, and the lady, it was an elderly lady who had flaring arthritis in both hands. And she couldn't even hold the meter. She couldn't, but anyhow, so her son was there. We got her bed all set up, but in the process, we sat her on the bed. And I remember I put a patch on her hand so I could do the measurements, because she couldn't hold anything. And after I was talking to her son a little bit, then she said, well, this one's working, but this one's not working. Well, the other one was for the meter. So, and I didn't really understand what she was saying, but she said, this one, we need to make this. So I swapped them. I put the live one over here and the meter over there. And then she said, now it's working. And so just in 5-10 minutes, her inflammation, her hot burning pain was beginning to subside. And so I didn't say too much about it there. I just, on the way home, I went in to the medical supply house and picked up a bunch of electrode patches and wires, and I gave them to a few friends. I said, hey, just do this. Ground yourself, put that patch on your pain. And the next morning, not the next morning, a couple of days, within a couple of days, started talking to everybody, and they kept calling it the magic pain patch, meaning you put the patch on, the pain disappears. Okay, so, but what was interesting is of those two people that are grounded that day, they were both live pads. They both had the same results. They both had significant decrease in inflammation. Their energy came up, their sleep improved, and so on. And I said, that's impossible because this guy didn't have any EMFs. This person had more EMFs than I'd ever seen. And so that was the day I recognized that it wasn't the electric fields and it wasn't all of the electrical noise in the environment that was causing the problem, or by removing it, it does not remove inflammation or pain. So then I started to go backwards and I said, okay, so it's the earth itself is the active agent. So what on earth is affecting the body? First of all, when you stand barefoot on the earth is negative about 20 millivolts, give or take, depending where you are. What that means is the earth is negative. It has an abundance of free electrons. Just like a battery, on the negative end, there's an abundance of electrons there that can flow, go through a light bulb, create light, and go to the positive side. So the positive side is pulling the negative electrons through the light bulb. Okay, so I said, okay, so what's happening here is I'm grounding the body. They're dropping to earth potential. And so their body is becoming flooded with free electrons. And so the pain, somehow or another, there's a factor here. But anyhow, so the main thing that came out of that study was, sure, improved sleep, reduced pain, but most of all, I learned that it was not EMFs, it was the earth itself. So then time went on, and I ended up meeting an anesthesiologist in San Diego who was retired, somewhat semi-retired, and he took interest in what I was doing. And we designed a study, and we measured cortisol every 4 hours for 24 hours. Then we grounded them for 6 to 8 weeks, measured the cortisol again every 4 hours for 24 hours. And what happened before, these cortisol secretion profiles were all over the place. But after they were grounded, then everything synchronized between all of the people in the study. Their cortisol profiles synchronized. At 4 a.m., it went up in a nice band, which helps you get out of bed in the morning. And then throughout the day it dropped. And then at night, that's when it was the lowest. And what we learned a couple of things. One, if your cortisol is elevated, you can't sleep. Other than that, sleep is autonomic. You're going to sleep like a baby. So it's all about cortisol. The other thing we learned was that we had 3 stewardesses that had begun in the study. They were New York based, living half the week in San Diego. And so we found them and grounded them. And then what we found was their cortisol profiles were off 3 hours from the subjects in California. And what that meant is cortisol is related to where you are on the planet. It's the earth. Something in the earth is regulating cortisol. So anyhow, then after we grounded them, within, their cortisol profiles changed immediately after grounding them. And we couldn't include them in the study because they were traveling too much and it was messing up their whole thing. But anyhow, we did learn that if you go outdoors after you get off of an airplane, stand barefoot on the earth, it resyncs your cortisol secretion profile, your hormonal clock, with the earth, and then you don't have jet lag. So it's a big thing with the airlines, pilots, and so on. So anyhow, but that study took us, and we did a bunch of heart rate variability at that time. Nobody knew what it was, even the anesthesiologist. He said, let's just do it. Everybody's talking about it. Let's do it. So we did it, and we had all these numbers and all these reports, but we couldn't make sense of them. And so Stephen Sinatra, who was a cardiologist, came to town at an event, a medical event. And he said, let's go over and visit with Stephen. So he drugged me over there, and we met Stephen, and I started telling him what I was doing and what we were experiencing. And he looked at me, he says, Clint, he says, I mean, the reason we went to him because cardiologists understand electrical. Everything in their world's electrical. And I needed to talk to an electrical person. So anyhow, he looked at me and he says, Clint, he says, if you're affecting pain, he says, you need to be studying inflammation because pain is a byproduct of inflammation. You cannot have pain unless you have inflammation. And to me, inflammation was you're out playing tennis and you sprain an ankle and it swells up and you can't walk. And he says, no, that's not what the inflammation we're talking about. That's an oxidative stress campaign or whatever. But he said the inflammation it's oxidation that's occurring in the body and it builds up slowly. And nobody really understood what caused the inflammation. And the only thing they could do, like the ladies on MS, lupus, and whatever, they would put them on steroids to calm the immune system. But on the other hand, they ballooned up and lots of issues that went along with it. So anyhow, then one day I was reading a paper on white blood cells, the immune system. And it was talking about how a neutrophil, typical white blood cell, that if you have an injury or a pathogen, you have a damaged tissue, then a neutrophil comes over, swims through the red blood cells, finds it, and encapsulates that cell or that pathogen. And then it releases reactive oxygen species. And when I heard the word reactive, then I knew immediately that that's an electrical term, meaning that there's a shortage of electrons. So that means it's reactive, meaning it can steal an electron from something. And so then I went further into that and I realized then that just, again, intuitively, I wasn't smart enough to figure this out. It came from nature, it came from the universe. So what I recognized, or what I learned eventually then, was if you have a pathogen or a damaged tissue, then the neutrophils come over and they encapsulate them and destroy the damaged cell or the parent. In the meantime, there may be excess reactive oxygen radicals. And if you do not have enough redox potential or enough free electrons to reduce them, they're going to steal an electron from a healthy cell or something in the near environment and steal an electron. And in the process, they're going to damage that. Then another neutrophil comes, and depending on the damage, and then so you have the same thing happening over and over, and the same event recurring. So you have what you call chronic inflammation. I mean, the body is on fire like a log, oxidizing, a flame oxidizing a log. So here, the word inflammation means body is in flame, it's on fire. So I took it literally, and it is literal. So anyhow, what happens to these neutrophils once they get out of hand and you don't have enough free electrons to prevent them from stealing electrons from healthy tissue, then it's a chronic fire. So common sense, cowboy logic. The earth is full of negative charge, and you stand on the earth, your body becomes negatively charged, and then it absorbs, or the body has an abundance of free electrons to neutralize and prevent these radicals from oxidizing healthy tissue. And it's really that simple. But again, it took me another 20 studies, to get it all done. And but that's where Stephen Sinatra came in. And then in order to really get to the bottom of that, Stephen invited me back to Essex, Connecticut, where he lives. And his wife has a studio there, a doctor's office downtown, that area. And so he had a dozen of his cohorts, cardiologists and researchers. We all got together, and what we did is we drew blood from each individual doc, and they put it under a microscope and looked at the blood. And a lot of them had rouleau formation or thick and sticky blood. He uses the term, like blood like ketchup versus blood like wine. And then we grounded them for 30, 40 minutes. And then everybody's blood separated, meaning they all spread out. It was kind of like, okay, well, this is wonderful, but what's causing this? How are the electrons doing this? So then Gaetan Chevalier out in San Diego, we took all that information to him. He designed a second study at the California Institute of Human Sciences. What they did there is we grounded the people just like we did there, but we grounded them for 2 hours. But what we did is he had a way of measuring the electrical surface charge on red blood cells. He could tell what the electrical charge was on the blood cell. If it's small, then the red blood cells will stick together. But the more you increase the negative surface charge on red blood cells, the more they repel each other. And then like little negatively charged magnets, they kind of push each other away. So what we learned is if you're grounded to the earth, your blood isn't thick and sticky. It's more like red wine. And so then, and we noticed also that anybody we ground within 10, 15 minutes, their complexion changes. It's like when you send a kid outdoors and they play in the backyard and they come in, their cheeks are all rosy. So then we learned that, well, by thinning the blood or normalizing the blood viscosity, then the red blood cells can get in and out of the capillaries and oxygenate the tissue properly and prevent inflammation and all of these things. So we learned that it was in the blood. By grounding the body, you ground the blood, and the blood has negative charge. And now if they're, and we believe that every cell has that same charge. We can't measure every cell, but we think that if you're increasing the negative charge on one cell, you're obviously doing it on every cell because they're all conductive, and every cell in the body is electrical. Negative on the outside, positive on the inside. It repolarizes. That's how it takes food in and takes garbage out every time there's a change in voltage. So there's all kinds of electrical phenomena there. So we just assume, but again, if you have chronic pain, which is produced by inflammation, no matter what it is, put a patch on them, an electrode patch, ground them to the earth. It's like cutting the skin open and pouring water on a fire or pouring electrons into the body. And then the pain subsides in just minutes. And so what you're doing when the pain subsides, you're putting out the fire, you're preventing the oxidative radicals from damaging new tissue. So I'll give you a break here.
You mean you want to take a break?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. No, I want to know, I want to kind of give people an understanding of, because you started out really targeting chronic pain, inflammation, sleeping. We moved to cortisol. What other, because I know when we first talked 8 years ago about, about the products and about the message, about the information. When I reached back out to you a couple months ago, you said, this is great because we've learned so much. I want to kind of go over the new list, if you will, for people that are listening. How they can do it on their own is to go and ground, right? So to be on the earth, to go on the sand, to go on the earth. But you have developed literally a product line of items that literally I'm sitting on, my feet are on, I sleep on, I have a blanket that will help the average person who's sitting at a desk all day long get more of this energy into you. But for what reason? So I want to sort of go over that.
Right. Well, I want to leave one thing about the inflammation before we leave that. Basically, what happens is when you have inflammation in your body, then your immune system is forever having to deal with that and clean up. So a lot of the energetics of the immune system are wasted on this inflammation. This inflammation does not occur in nature. Animals in the wild don't have inflammation. Animals who live indoors with their owners all suffer from the same autoimmune diseases and inflammation-related health disorders as their owners. So this is environmental, but the main thing is when you put the fire out, then your energy comes way up. So that's an important factor. But anyhow, so on to the products and stuff. These products first of all, I started out getting people to go outdoors and put their bare feet on the earth. Something back then, if I went to the beach over here in Carlsbad, everybody had shoes on. Everybody walking up and down the beach, they had shoes on. And now today, you won't find hardly anybody on the beach with shoes. So it's carried over. And so it's a bigger thing down here. But anyhow, so the first thing I've always indicated to anybody, no matter what's going on, if you're not sleeping well, go outdoors and stand on the earth for 30 minutes before you go to bed. Just put your bare feet on the earth, sit in a chair. If you're on a concrete porch, water it down a little bit, put your feet on it. But just ground yourself out, get the charge out of your body. And what you learn is, and then if you have any pain, notice the change and those kind of things. A half hour of grounding is not going to fix you because in nature, we would be grounded 24/7 and your immune system would be protected 24/7. But today, so anyhow, as time went on, as we used these products, we had to create patches and bands and mats so that we could do our studies, because you can't ground somebody walking down the street. I mean, you had to have them sleep grounded, sit grounded, put patches on them, do something, and then you would measure them. But as time, all the subjects, they wanted to take them home with them because of the pain relief, especially the MS, lupus, and the flaring fibromyalgias and the arthritis. And then any of them that had relatives, they all wanted it. So there began this little demand. So whenever we would do a study, we would have excess products. So we'd cut it up and give it to them or sell it to them or whatever. And we'd buy more stuff. And then so we kept improving everything. And then one day we said, okay, what's the best thing we can do for anybody? Said, number one is nobody's going to comply with anything new. So just forget that. If they have to do something, they're not going to do it. So I said, okay, let's put a mat in their bed under the sheet. That way, all they have to do is one time, put it over the mattress, under the sheet, and then put their sheet over it. And all they have to do is lay down and go to sleep. The next night they come home, they don't have to think about it, but they lay down and go to sleep, they're grounded. There's nothing more that I can do or recommend to anybody more that's more beneficial, that takes less effort than just laying down on a mat and going to bed. So the second thing was for acute injury, like flaring arthritis, flaring autoimmune diseases, the best thing to do is to put an electrode patch on it, because what you're doing is you're grounding out the charge and protecting, you're putting the fire out. Again, there's a lot of things that drive these inflammatory components. I could go on for an hour just on lupus and MS, because people aren't born with those health disorders. Those are environmental health disorders, but they don't know it. And it's an event happened to them, and they ended up in a chronically elevated sympathetic state. Cortisol started running through the body. Then all of a sudden, anxiety, irritability, depression, chronic pain, and then the body becomes so exhausted that the health becomes compromised, and it's just an endless story. So anyhow, the second product was the patch. That's for an acute situation or anything like that, or people who have COPD, put it on the lung, whatever. It stops the cytokine storms and so on. I'm not trying to be doctor here, so I have to be careful with all that, because I'm not trying to. These are just observations and things we know, and we've grounded millions of people, and we kind of know what the deal is. But it's based on people talking to us. And then the other thing that the next thing we designed was, the first thing we ever used was a mat that was like 12, 14 inches wide, 2 feet, like the one on the back of your chair. It's 40 inches long. And so we call it the universal mat. You can sleep on it, you can sit on it, you can put your feet on it, and it's the most affordable. And so there's no reason that if you can't, when I was talking to some of the people at the NIH, they said, we understand what you're doing and all this kind of good stuff. They said, the main thing you have to do, you have to be careful. So basically, before you go out and tell people they have this problem, you need to give them a solution. You need to give them a no-cost solution if you want it for the masses, or you have to have a low-cost solution. So I said, how about this? We'll do both. Take your shoes off, go barefoot, it's free. But if you don't want to sleep in the yard, here's something you can sleep on for X number of dollars and get the benefits. So the universal mat, the sleep mat, and the patches are the three things that I promote. I don't really promote anything in the sense that I want to. I've never sold a pad. All I've ever done is explain them and let people experience them. I've grounded groups of 1, 10, 30, as many as 1,000 people at longevity conferences at one time for 3 days. And so my whole game is to get people grounded and let them experience it, because it's an experiential thing. You're not going to believe it until you experience it.
I didn't need to experience it to believe it.
Okay.
The whole concept. But if we understand that the Earth spinning in its orbit
Yes.
is all about energy,
Yes.
and that the center of the Earth is energy,
Right.
and that and the way people feel when they go to the beach for the day or they go into the forest, and it's not just the disconnection. Like, I love that you said that, because there are a lot of people who want to just focus on the EMFs in our surrounding areas, and that's not going to get any better, really.
No,
I mean, really, technology is going to continue
Yeah,
doing what it's doing.
You're not going to change that.
Right. But what can we do about it is the question. And if we remember what it feels like when we're out in the woods or we're at the beach or we're walking barefoot and we feel this sense of peace and calm, that's what, and I don't know anyone that can't relate to that, who comes away, besides it being a vacation, that someone can't come away from time in nature and say, oh, I feel really hyped up. Everybody feels calm and balanced. So I didn't experience it. I'm that person. I'm the weird person like you who thinks ahead, that says, well, what if this and what if that? And so I have absolutely been promoting the idea of earthing for as long as you've had the book out. So what, 9 years now. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because it is on the free level, something very simple we could do. Getting back to nature, being better for your health, going out and earthing. I have pictures on Instagram from 3 years ago of me taking a picture of my feet in the grass, reading a book saying, look, everybody earth for 20 to 30 minutes every day before you go to bed. I deal with people who have anxiety, who have depression, who want weight loss, who have inflammation. So this is the world I'm in, and you're giving us a tool, both free and at cost. And again, I've have my earthing mat, and I love this one that I could sleep on by myself. I love my new one that my partner Doug and I can sleep on, and I love the blanket where I can turn it over and my cats can sleep on it, because I have indoor animals, and I feel badly at one, a little bit, that they're not out in nature, but I don't want them to be out in nature where we are right now. It's not safe for them. And so I love that they're now sleeping on my earthing blanket, and they're getting some of that they're not getting outside.
Right. No, animals, they all migrate to the grounding products.
So let's talk about some of the other, we'll talk a little bit more about what other, because I think I have all the products, or I have a lot of them. Let's talk about the other conditions, because as you're, chronic pain,
Okay.
inflammation, cortisol issues, I heard you say MS, lupus, any autoimmune disorder, probably.
Yes, it really kind of goes like this. I've grounded probably more people with MS and lupus and fibromyalgia in that group than any other single group. The guys I stay away from because they just have too many challenges with this, except for the athletes. The athletes love grounding, and it's a big thing in the athletic community. They don't talk about it much, and many times it's their coaches and their doctors that promote the grounding. Uh, but yeah, that's a whole different world. But most women, that's who I dealt with the most. That's who showed up. Wasn't my choice necessarily. But for instance, one day I was grounding a lady with MS, and she had severe MS. I was visiting with her, and the doctor told her, said, well, there's nothing that will help MS. He said, you might as well get a big TV screen and get one of those beds that go up and down, because it's not going to get better. And I've heard this from more than one, that story from more than one person or something similar. And I said, well, I don't have a clue. And I said, but I'm more than happy to get you grounded and see what happens. And in that process, I was visiting with her, and I asked her, I said, you weren't born with MS, were you? No. Well, when did it start? How long have you had it? And I think she said it was like 3 or 4 years. And then I said, well, do you know what caused it, or, what brought it about, what caused it to manifest? And she said, I don't know. It just, inherited or whatever. And then I got in the habit of asking every woman with lupus, MS, or a chronic autoimmune disease, what happened? And then I began to hear stories. Well, just before that, my mother died, my father died, or I lost a child, I got a divorce, I lost my house, I lost. And they went into a sympathetic state, a chronically elevated sympathetic, so they're always stressed. And unfortunately, on the other side, it's like our sympathetic system, it registers anything. I mean, it's our fight or flight system. But you have a parasympathetic over here that kind of modulates that and kind of keeps it under control. So people who are not chronically in a sympathetic state, their parasympathetic is functioning. But the problem is that parasympathetic will only last so long. It's using hormones. And so as you exhaust your adrenals, then the sympathetic becomes more pronounced, and your cortisol gets all messed up, and cortisol creates inflammation creates anxiety, irritability, and pain, and that creates more cortisol and more pain and more inflammation. So it's a vicious cycle. So I learned that all of these autoimmune diseases, by and large, are environmental, meaning something in your environment, something what you're thinking, eating, doing, something that you did is interfering with your body's system, your immune system, to the degree that it can no longer maintain health. So until you stop and pull that out, ground it out, get rid of it, then it's going to be very challenging for you to recover. And I used to use this little story. I tell this story about when I was young. You'd be out there in the pasture, and some years we'd just have an outbreak of rabbits. There would be more rabbits than you've ever seen before. At night, you shine a light, and it looks like it's water out there, all of the rabbit eyes. And then that same year, you would have the coyotes would start to. There'd be a lot of coyotes. So what the whole game was, is the rabbit was always sitting there eating, and there was always a coyote sneaking up on the rabbit. And as soon as the rabbit or the coyote got close, then the rabbit's ears would go up like this, and then the cortisol would spike, and the coyote would lunge, and then the rabbit would spring, and he would zigzag back and forth across the pasture. And there's 90% of the time, almost always, the coyote ran out of energy, and he would just lay down there and pant. And then the rabbit would run just a little bit further. He wouldn't keep running. He would just run a little bit further. Conservation of energy in nature. And he would sit there and he would be shaking like this. You could see it. And then all of a sudden, he'd have one big shake like that. Then he'd go back to eating like nothing ever happened. It's like a lot of people with these autoimmune diseases is everything's a coyote, whether it's the mail, a text, a phone call, driving to work, the boss, customers, children, everything that goes on in life. If somebody drops a fork, I mean, a woman's cortisol will spike with noise. A man won't so much. But anyhow, so we have 1,000 coyotes every day, but we don't ground out. We don't ground out that fight or flight response. And as a result, it exhausts our adrenals and we can never recover. So the main thing I try to get them to relate to that metaphorically somehow. You got to ground out that stress every day. You either do it by going outdoors a couple times a day and putting your bare feet on the earth, or you sleep grounded, or you ground yourself at the office. Do one, but you have to ground it out. You have to get rid of it. Otherwise, it's going to eat you up, literally eat you up. Lupus, the term lupus, it means wolf in German. The reason they use that term is because a wolf, if it's caught in a trap or if it's whatever, it'll actually chew its leg off to save itself. So here, with lupus, you have the immune system attacking something in the body, and so it's eating up the body. So it's lupus. It's like the wolf. So, but it is literally that's the way they looked at it for 100 years. Lupus. Anyhow, I could go on and on. Whether it's really about anxiety. It's if you're grounded out. Everybody wants happiness. They want this. They want that. They want all of these things. But everybody's immune system is compromised. Everybody's adrenals are compromised. And as long as you're off center, you're not well grounded. And I mean that literally, not only just physically grounded, but mentally and emotionally grounded. These are the things in life that are meaningful to me. These are the things that aren't, or these are the things I need to cut out of my life, no matter what they are, because it's affecting my physiology. It's affecting my state. It's affecting my health. It's going to kill me. So you need to get rid of those things. If you can't afford your house, then get rid of it. Whatever it is that's eating you up. And then, you have to put the fire out. That's the mental side of it. Then you have to put the fire out, and that's a gift of nature. All you have to do is touch the earth. And then all of a sudden, the human body, we are the earth up walking around. I mean, we eat the earth, we drink the earth, we breathe the earth, and we have sunlight, and it's just all one thing. And we have to know that we're a part of it, and we have to be in tune with it. Because there's that saying, you can't fool Mother Nature, not for long. You're going to pay a high price. And that's what we're doing today. Our food needs to be cleaned up. But more so with this, it's about restoring your adrenals. And you can only do that by getting grounded mentally, I think that's one of your expertises. And, do all these things at once. And then it's a gift. Life is a gift. Everything on this planet is a gift. And we should be so grateful that we're even alive, and able to share and participate with each other. That's the most outstanding great thing that we're trying to achieve. And we're lost along the way with, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to, and it's nonsense. Look to nature. Everything is in nature. All the answers you want are in nature. Go into the woods and watch the wild animals. They have perfect health. Everything's perfect.
I think you left us hanging a little bit with what happened to the lupus ladies and the MS ladies in terms of how they felt after being grounded.
Okay, let me give you an example. If you have lupus, what you have in most cases, you have neutrophils oxidizing, eating up the myelin sheath around the nerves. And then as that deteriorates, then that's when they lose control and a lot of the other issues and so on. So what happens is that's an oxidative process. Lupus is a similar thing, arthritis and so on. Fibromyalgia, the phantom pains that are going all around the body. Those are, if you have pain, there's inflammation there. So what happens if you have, and this is in the movie, it's in the books and whatever, but if you have MS, put a patch on the hand. And I always tell them, okay, you no longer have MS. What you have is damage from MS. But as of this minute, you no longer have MS, because right now your body's being flooded with free electrons, and that stopping the fire, stopping the neutrophils from oxidizing healthy tissue. Now, you need to get grounded, and we learned this with MS. A lot of them have a lot of damage. A lot of them never will fully recover, but most can if they just get on it and change their mental and physical. And so anyhow, but basically, you put that patch on there, and now there's not going to be any more inflammation. And you have to stay there to keep that fire out. But if you got all of this craziness going on in your head, then it's going to be trying to feed that fire, but as long as you're grounded, you're okay. It's like the rabbit in the pasture. So the problem early on is we would ground ladies with MS with patches or pads or whatever, and they would sleep well and get really improved sleep. But by 10 o'clock in the morning, they were back in trouble. So then we started finding ways to ground them for an extra 6 hours. If they're sitting at home, put bands on them, patches, and they walk back and forth to the kitchen, have cords, whatever. But we found that 12 hours, more like 16 hours of grounding, they had significant benefits. And then they started making good progress. If they got grounded for 24/7 and stayed grounded, then they had miraculous results in a short period of time. It's all about putting that fire out.
What I love about this concept, this science, these products, is that when applied, it works. And when applied for longer periods of time, it helps the body to heal.
Yes.
Because we can't walk around. I mean, we can decide to go live off the grid and then you're good. But even then, we still have, you just mentioned the mental component and the mental emotional trauma, PTSD component. Did you ever follow anyone that was under any kind of program to help with some of those traumas that you identified when you asked them, when did you get this? Did you notice that anyone doing any kind of therapeutic processes, EMDR, EFT, energy healing to really try to help that sort of mental, emotional piece, did they get any different progress?
I have a lot of anecdotal information. Up at Moffett Air Force Base, they would bring some of the people back from Iraq, and they would put them in these chambers. And then one day they wanted to start grounding them in the chambers, because when they grounded them, they got better results and so on. And after a few weeks, then they would return them to Iraq or whatever. Those kind of things. A lot of the women, basically, as soon as they get well, they're gone. I got my life back. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that's all they want, is they want their life back. And then, once you do get back in action, then you step right back. You're right back in step with society and so on. But there is an issue here that everybody needs to address, because it has to do like autism. 1 in 50 kids now has autism. When I started doing this, it was 1 in 10,000, just 20 years ago. Okay, what's going on? I mean, autism is an inflammation-related health disorder. We know that. Now, whether it's brought on by this event, that event, that's irrelevant. But basically, I think it's, cytokine storms, or you inoculate somebody with 20, 30 types of viruses, whatever. So the immune system has to adapt to that. And there's a super immune response. And that may be the cause of it. But it doesn't matter. It could be a kid going out and jumping up and down all day on a trampoline. It doesn't matter. Or it's like most athletes who, exercise, running, you're building up inflammation in your body. You're doing as much damage as you are good. Unless you ground yourself out afterwards, you have to get rid of that inflammation. So I focus pretty much on the grounding, but I always tell the story. You've got to, and that's why I hooked up with Deepak Chopra and Muriel. And basically, Deepak, I taught him grounding and he taught me grounding this, and I said, you take care of that and I will take care of this. Yoga, meaning, connecting with nature, connecting with each other, connecting with reality. Do whatever you have to do, but get your health back. Get yourself mentally, tune into nature. Nature will take care of you. That's one of the main things about grounding. As soon as you ground the body, it quiets the sympathetic nervous system, brain, and you get there more synchronous. And we have this from biofeedback and all kinds of that kind of studies. So there's a calming effect that comes over the body. And when the body calms, and when you're connected to nature, that's an electrical phenomena. So now you are electrically connected to every other person grounded on the earth, every animal, every tree, every plant, everything that is connected to the surface of the earth. You're in tune with it. I mean, and the resonant frequencies of the earth. Your body is humming with the earth rather than the environmental electric fields and noise out here. And then you shift, you change your whole body. It's like, some people call it a religious experience. I don't use the word religious so much as.
Well, anytime something happens they can't see. Listen, everything in life is invisible. My original company is called Invisible Fitness. It's because the things you can't see create the things that you can see. So this electromagnetic field, these ions, we can't see any of that, but yet it creates matter. It moves matter. It changes matter.
And it's all electrical first, chemical second. So, but what we have to go with, the only thing we really have to go with is nature, because all the answers are right there.
Mm-hmm. And your products can help everyone automatically, without having to do any mental, emotional work, get grounded and feel relief. I'm still a believer in, if you have chronic pain, if you have lupus, if you have MS, if you have a trauma, which everybody has, obviously I can help you to heal some of that trauma, so that way you don't have to be different or avoid everything. You can be different in the same situation, but be healthier in the process and get your body healed, so that way you can start to create less inflammation and let the body heal itself.
One of the main things there is, like, these people are all very sensitive. They're electrically sensitive, emotionally sensitive, and some of them, they're sensitive to wind, noise, heat, cold, fabrics, everything. And the reason is because their adrenals are exhausted. There's nothing to modulate the sympathetic response. So everybody feels that static charge, but if your adrenals are fine, you don't notice it.
Good to know. I never heard that, and I love that, because I, again, knew that there was an imbalance, but I didn't realize it was in the adrenals and the parasympathetic nerves.
Yeah. So the main thing to focus on is restoring the adrenals, and the only way you can restore the adrenals is get your head balanced, your thoughts, your emotions.
Yep. And ground at the same time. So I'm going to send everybody to jjflazanes.com/earthing. But I really appreciate you being on the show. I want to continue this conversation of teaching people. I mean, I know you have years of research and studies, and
I do.
And it's, I know. So whether it's you that comes back on, or Muriel or somebody else to talk about earthing, I would love to, because again, it's a simple. People are always looking for simple ways to improve their lives, and you provide a simple way for them to feel less pain. And even though I'm on the other end of the spectrum of not trying to overcomplicate, really trying to simplify, but trying to heal on the other levels, everything that can make our lives easier or make our bodies heal themselves faster, I'm 100% on board for.
Well, I'm totally available if you ever want to get together again and for sure get Mariel on, because she can speak more clearly to women than I can.
No, but what I love, it was very cute when you said you had to hire somebody to interface with all the women from the beauty salons. And I thought, yeah, that was real smart of you, because that would have caused you a lot of oxidative stress to deal with the emotions of all these women who have issues and problems. And now they're coming to you for a solution and help.
Yeah. It's another thing too that I learned in a long way is some people lose weight from grounding. And what it is you're reducing that anxiety, irritability, and depression.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of stuffing and trying to calm their feelings, it doesn't cause them to lose weight by themselves. What it does is it allows them to rebuild their adrenals, bring up their energy, bring up their metabolism, and they have more energy, and then they can get back into life. So I just threw that out there for noise.
It's not noise. People want to hear that. They want to know that not only they're going to have less pain and inflammation and joint issues, that they could possibly lose weight and get rid of depression and anxiety. I think that's a good thing.
But anyhow, the main thing too is the movie is out now. How
long has it been out though?
It's only been out a few months. We've just been running it through the film festivals. It won the Audience Choice Award in Hollywood at the Dances with Films Festival. And that's a big deal. That's one of the main festivals in the world. We're letting people like yourself have private screenings for anybody that wants to watch it. And then we'll put it out this fall sometime. And then we also have Muriel with her new MH Earthing. And you'll love that, because in the back of that book, and that'll go out with every product I think that goes out, is every story. These are customers. Here's MS going from whatever to up walking around. Here's, you name it. But she's a good curator, and so she's going to try to pull together so that women can help understand earthing better. Because I'm too technical, I'm too into the science.
I don't think you're too technical. Because the women who are listening to this, they're going to listen to me first, go on and on at the beginning of the show, because they can do the technical, but they're going to send this to their husbands, and they're going to send this to the men who are listening, are going to understand the science. And I am science-based. So, I started out science-based. Well, I started out as an actress as well, but so I have that emotional piece, but then I turned my brain on when I became a personal trainer and actually learned science, and all sciences: physics, biomechanics, physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, and now, the sciences of the brain. So I'm science-based, but at the same time, I'm literally balanced brain. So that's why I don't need to, I have the strong intuition to say earthing. Yep. Get it. Don't need to read the book. I get it. I know what, I understand. Or biology belief. I've been talking about it for years, bought the book to argue with a science brain and thought, I don't want to argue with him. If he's not interested, he can buy the book himself. So I appreciate you taking the time, Clint. And yes, you're welcome to come back on. So is Muriel. So is Deepak. Anybody that you want to send to talk about earthing, I'm happy to interview, because I'm like you, would love to share this information as wide as we can and get everybody earthing more.
All right. Very good. Thanks, JJ. Appreciate it. Bye.